Hi team. This is going to be another example on how we can work on inclusive probability. So in this case we're going to be talking about doctors attending a conference. It's pretty exciting stuff. Here's our numbers. So of the 400 doctors who attend the conference, 240 practice family medicine and 130 are from countries outside of the US. 1/3 of the family medicine practitioners were not from the US. Okay, so from here, let's take a second and try and get this Venn diagram filled out. I know that I have 400 total that are at this event, and in these two circles, what I'm going to write here, the first one is going to be family practitioners, and then the second circle is going to be outside of the US. Okay, and then everywhere outside of these two circles is going to account for people that were from inside the US and were not family practitioners. Okay, so we have 240 practicing family medicine. So I'm just going to write in small numbers here 240 because we're going to erase that in a second. And then I'm also going to write 130 down here, and that accounts for people that were from outside of the US. 1/3 of the family medicine practitioners were not from the US. So that means that of this 240, 1/3 of them are from outside of the US. So 1/3 of 240 is going to be 80. But then what I have to do is I have to make sure that this whole box here equals 240. So I think I'm going to do 160. Yeah, because 160 plus 80 gives me 240. Now I can scratch that number out. Okay, and then on the other side, on the outside of the US, there's 80 that are family practitioners, so that means that there's going to have to be another 50 that are not. And then when I add those two up, 80 plus 50, that gives me 130. So I can cross that out. Finally, to figure out the remainder that are not family practitioners and not in the US, I'm going to subtract 160 and 80 and 50 from 400. And what that amounts to is 160, 80, 50, carry the 1 squared, square root. Okay, it's 110. Okay, so that means that there's 110 practitioners that are not for families, and they are from the U.S. All right. From here, let's go ahead and answer the first question. So on the first question here, what is the probability that a doctor practices family medicine or is from the U.S.? Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight areas that are fitting to what we're talking about. So first of all, the probability that a doctor practices family medicine. Well, anywhere in this first circle is going to be doctor practicing family medicine. So we're going to fill this one in. Okay, and then the probability that a doctor is from the United States is going to be this whole area out here. And a couple of you are maybe thinking, well, what about, let me get a different color here. You're probably thinking, well, what about this number right here? How come we included that one? And the reason we did is because of this statement right up here where it says or. And what that means is, first of all, did I find a doctor that practices family medicine? And in this circle right here, yes, I did. This whole circle includes everybody that practices family medicine. And then or is from the United States. From the United States means anywhere in the outside area. So what I'm going to ultimately do here to find my probability is I'm going to say 160 plus 80 and then also plus 110. And then that whole number divided by the total number of people at the conference, which is 400. When I add these up together, I end up with 350 over 400, and that can boil down to 7/8. There's your first question. Okay, from here, let's talk about the next round. Let's get my highlighter ready here. Okay, what is the probability that a doctor practices family medicine or is not from the United States? So let's just first do not from the United States. Well, that's going to be, let's get my highlighter here, that's going to be this whole area in here. And what about this 80? Well, yeah, these people are not from the US also. Okay, and then the other thing we want to talk about is the probability that a doctor practices family medicine. Well, that's going to be this whole chunk right here. Okay, and remember the statement right up here, or, it means both. Like when you go to the math cafeteria, they say, would you like soup or salad? You can just say, yeah, I'd like both. So what we're going to do is when we want to get the probability for this, I'm going to add up all the green stuff. So I'm going to do 160 plus 80 plus 50, and then the whole thing divided by 400. And then that ends up giving me about 290 over 400, and that can reduce down to 29 over 40. This last example, number 8, is, well, what is the probability that a doctor does not practice family medicine or is from the United States? And remember, we're looking for either of the two. Okay, so for starters, well, let's just do the obvious. Doctor that does not practice family medicine. Well, that's going to be, oh, gotta get my highlighter. There we go. That's going to be all of these people right here, right? Because we know that they don't practice family medicine. And we also know that this whole area right here does not practice family medicine. Okay, so that's the family medicine part taken care of. Okay, the next thing though is we need to ask, well, is a doctor from the United States? Well, if I look in the family practitioners area, I would hope that this bunch, the 160 bunch, is from the United States, because the only thing that I have left over is this 80 right in the middle, and that is doctors that are family practitioners and doctors that are from outside of the United States. So you could almost look at this as a complement problem where I'm doing 1 minus the 80 over 400. So there's two different ways that we could write this. Let me grab my pen. The two different ways that we could write this could be, we could do 1 minus 80 over 400, and that ends up being 7/8. Or we could do 160 plus 50 plus 110 all over 400, and then that adds up to be 7/8.